Have you ever had that moment when you think, I just can't keep doing this the same way anymore? But you also had no idea what comes next. Today's guest didn't just change her relationship with alcohol, she walked away from a stable corporate career and built something entirely new. And what I love about this conversation is it's not just what she built, it's how she decided she was ready to be seen doing it. If you've stepped away from drinking or the things that used to numb you, you know it changes your life. But it changes the people watching you too. You become quiet proof that something better is possible. On Sober Life Rocks, we talk with people who realize that their choice wasn't just personal, it was a platform, a chance to be a leader, to shorten somebody else's learning curve, to do something that really mattered. If you felt that pull, you're in the right place. Subscribe and stay with us. Today's guest is someone who brings both energy and honesty to this conversation. Jodi Clark is the founder of Sober Flourish, a coach, a writer, a guide for women who are rethinking their relationship with alcohol and what they want their lives to look like moving forward. But what makes her story especially interesting to me is that she didn't just make this personal shift, she made an entirely professional one, leaving behind a corporate career to build something rooted in her own experience and choosing to be very visible about it along the way. And today we're going to talk about how that actually unfolded. Jodi, welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. I'm so delighted that you're here with us.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. So before we get into anything meaningful, I just need to understand something about you because your Instagram suggests that you are just not your average sober coach. So what's something that your clients would be surprised to learn about you? Or maybe what's your most unhinged or chaotic personality trait?
Oh my goodness, talk about put me on the spot. I would say that I am wildly sarcastic, which is possibly not my best trait.
I just love your Instagram. You're so full of energy, so full of life. But now that we have that out of the way, um, let's go back to the version of you before all this started. Maybe in your corporate life. If I had met you then, what would I have seen?
Possibly not too dissimilar to today, to be honest with you, Margie. I was always very determined, always very driven, always trying to climb the corporate ladder. I look like I kind of holding it all down. I got a couple of kids at home. Lovely house, lovely marriage, etc. So not too dissimilar. And you probably wouldn't have been able to tell that I was particularly living out of alignment either, to be honest with you. But yeah, I was very passionate. I was a team lead, a manager, so I had a team. Always very focused. So yeah, that not too dissimilar to really now what I portray now, to be honest.
And where did alcohol enter your story and what was your relationship with it?
Okay, so alcohol entered my story when I was very young, maybe 14, 15. I'd grown up in a family where alcohol was very prevalent, not in a outwardly unhealthy way at the time, didn't feel like it was unhealthy, but it was around me a lot. Then growing up, I was a bit of a party girl, the usual story, loved to have a drink, loved to be a party girl. People would always end up back at my house after a weekend out on the town, etc. Alcohol's always had a huge part in my life. Always, always, always. It's been deeply ingrained right from being probably around 15 through to my 20s. Um, yeah, and kind of really only got to a point where I felt like I needed to change that relationship um, when I was in my late 30s.
So for you, it was really about being the center of the party.
Yeah, yeah, life and soul. Always the kind of, I used to pride myself on being the last one standing, one of the lads, being able to drink with the others and kind of keep up with them. It was just fun. I've no regrets. I have no regrets with how I used to drink, and we've had a lot of great memories and a lot of great times. So I don't think you can kind of look back and have those regrets, or nor should you. Um, but yeah, it's always just been
Well,
very,
some
very
people,
deeply ingrained. Hey.
some people do have those
Well,
regrets.
well, yeah, yeah, okay. Not one for now. We'll talk about.
So was there a particular moment when you said, "Oh, this needs to be looked at," or was it more of a slow burn? Like what happened that got you to where you started to question that.
Yeah, so it was definitely a slow burner, and it was around the time that COVID hit. And I think people kind of sit in one of two camps usually. I'd been talking about this just recently on another podcast where people kind of either stopped completely or things got really bad. And at the time, I would have been, I think, 39. I got my eldest, who was 10 at the time, Dexter,
Hmm.
and my youngest, who was 2. And then my husband, who was in the Royal Air Force, so he was still working away a lot. And then obviously COVID hit. No need to get up and drive anywhere the next day. I was managing a team at work that spanned across India and America and the UK. Highly stressful. Obviously, home was chaotic also, as it was for many, many people. But I wasn't one of those that had to leave for work. I could work from home.
Hmm.
So the kind of green light to drink was a lot more frequent than it normally would be. Now, right up until that point, I would say, and I don't like it when people sort of say, I only drink at weekends, because people can only drink at weekend and put a lot of alcohol away, which was me, which was me. I used to sort of say I only drink at weekends, but I would drink a lot. We would be in the pub, we would drink at home. If we went out, we'd always got wine to open when we got back. Base my whole week around that kind of can't wait to get to Friday sort of mentality. Then when it got to COVID, it was very much normalized, especially like in my friendship group, that we would be opening the wine earlier, or that we'd send photos around the
5 o'clock
WhatsApp,
somewhere.
taking photos. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. You'll have heard this many times, I'm sure. Um, so it crept into being more of a daily occurrence for me. And during this time, for us in the UK, it was red hot, very out of the ordinary, hot, hot summer for us. So it felt like we were all abroad. So we were all in that holiday mentality. None of us really knew what was going on. We're all in our bubbles, etc. And it was kind of any rule goes. I think that was a lot for a lot of people. It had that sentiment in a time where we actually had a hell of a lot of rules to keep us at home and in control. But what we could control was how much alcohol we were drinking. So we were having at it. So it definitely got worse for me. And with that, whenever I drank a lot, I ate a lot as well. So not only was I drinking more, I was then eating more. And then because I was eating more, I got the calories from the alcohol, I put on a hell of a lot of weight. Um, so over the course of maybe that year and a half, I had increased my weight quite heavily. And my mental health had started to decline. I was super anxious. I think that had actually started to happen prior to COVID. But the additional alcohol had kind of again added fuel to that fire and made it much worse.
And COVID.
Completely. There was all sorts going on. And the stress from work, again, I didn't realize at the time, but I was massively misaligned. I was overworked. I know that now, looking on reflection. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a bit of a recipe for eventual burnout without me actually realizing. So alcohol had just got worse and worse, more and more regular. And then we went on holiday. All of that cleared. Obviously, COVID had passed, and in the August 2022 we went on an all-inclusive holiday. And on that holiday, I had a few moments of realization where I was actually preferring my time alone with a bottle of Prosecco rather than being with my family. And it was an all-inclusive holiday. We weren't the stereotypical kind of family kind of lounging about drinking the whole time, although each to their own, you do you. But we would have drinks at night. When we finished our drinks at night, we would take a bottle of Prosecco back to the room with us. And that was the bit I look forward to the entire day. And there
Mhm.
was a few little things like that started to kind of tot up to me. They weren't in my conscious, but they were kind of planting the seeds in my subconscious that potentially something might need to change a little bit. But I'd also spent a lot of that holiday feeling really uncomfortable because I hadn't managed to lose the weight that was extra for me. Um, so I'd felt uncomfortable, noticed I was drinking, and it was a big priority for me. Um, so I just made the call. And again, I'm possibly making quite light work of this. There was a lot that kind of went on for me. But on that last day of the holiday, I decided I was going to take a 100-day break. Because I'd done this before in terms of taking little breaks here and there because I linked drinking directly to my weight. I just always had
Mhm.
it. Every time I could ever get the weight off in my mind was when I took breaks from alcohol. So on that holiday, I realized if I'm going to get my body back to where I want to, where I feel healthy, and comfortable, I need to take a really good break from drinking.
So it was a
Again,
diet.
it was meant to be a diet. So, but I knew that it needed to be a lot longer than a week or 2 weeks or a month because I'd tried loads of breaks before and never managed to get to the full month. So I set myself a 100-day challenge. And that's where all of this started from that 100 day. And from August the 30th, when I got back from that holiday, I have not touched a drink since then. And that is over 3.5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you thought about that 100-day break, what seemed the most daunting?
All of it. The thought of not drinking, Margie, was just absolutely ludicrous to me. Why would I not want to drink? Like, it was the one thing I felt like I had for myself. And I think that as, not to kind of gender make it specific, but I think as mums and as we naturally do have so much on our plates anyway, as women. And we do, and with the hundreds of women that have kind of walked this path with me, we do sadly get to a point where we think that alcohol is the only thing that we have for ourselves. It's our only way of unwinding.
Do you know,
Um,
I've been watching a lot of videos recently of men finally realizing that disparity of what it looks like for a woman, a mother particularly,
oh yeah,
to never have time off.
yeah, yeah,
The both come home from work
yeah.
and the man sits down and wonders what's for dinner.
Hmm.
And the man gets frustrated when he's asked to go take the kids to some activity. Like
Hmm.
it's so fascinating to me that men have never really understood this. But I
Hmm.
remember vividly at the time that I was raising kids, it was it was my only reward. It was
Yeah,
being able to go into the bath and shut the
yeah,
door and
yeah,
bring the glass and the bottle of wine
yeah, yeah,
and just have 10 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
It was the only time that I knew how to claim for myself. Or when the kids went to
yeah,
bed and I was exhausted, but I had half an hour before I had to collapse into bed
yeah,
for me.
yeah,
It's it's hard for others to really wrap their heads around
yeah,
how that feels in your body
yeah,
to never be able to claim for yourself and to have one thing that you have attached that feeling to, and then to be asked to give that up.
yeah.
I think that is such an important point. And I remember when I got sober and I got sober with an interventionist and I said to him, I was like, it's the only thing that I have to cope with all the stuff. I mean, I was self-medicating, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And if I go down, this whole thing goes down. I was a single mom at the time. The whole thing goes down. Then what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts like that, doesn't it? It starts for you to kind of think, oh, it's just my me time. And then you find whilst you're sat reading the kids a bedtime story, you would rather be downstairs. You're thinking about the wine and wishing, oh, for God's sake, can we just finish this chapter so that I can get back downstairs to my wine? And then that's it. It's a slippery slope there. We talk about that kind of grey area, that part in the middle. I always call it the forgotten middle because unless you are a unicorn and can completely moderate, or you are heavily dependent on it, in the middle, it's just heavily promoted and
Yeah.
encouraged and shamed
Yeah.
if you want to stop drinking, etc. But it's so quick. It's so quick to drift from the scale, from the lighter grey area to the darker grey area, where it's just the one thing and that's totally normalized. To now, actually, I don't want to partake in anything that you lot are doing. I just want to be with my wine.
Yes.
It happens so
Yes.
quickly. It really does.
So, Jody, I have another kind of follow-up question. In thinking about going back to that time and thinking about this 100-day challenge,
Yeah,
what were you afraid would change?
everything. I cannot underestimate that enough, or overestimate that, whichever the way is the right way of saying it. Everything. It was so deeply ingrained in everything that I did. How I socialized, how I celebrated, how my husband and I spent time together. That was one of the biggest concerns I had, that our relationship was going to change for the worse. How I socialized with my friends, how I would connect with work colleagues. I remember going to a Christmas party at work and just feeling like, just all of a sudden, I've been there nearly 9 years at the time, 8 years, 9 years at the time, and just feeling alien, just not feeling, not necessarily that I didn't fit in anymore, just that I really wasn't that bothered about fitting in anymore. It was just I was concerned about absolutely everything. The thought of Dale and I hitting retirement and alcohol not having a huge part in it, it used to make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But as it's turned out, everything I was worried about has become better. My husband and I, our relationship is better than it's ever been, and he doesn't drink now, which I never thought was going to happen. Never once has that been encouraged from my part. Obviously, I always longed for the day that he wouldn't, and he was never a Larry drunk or he didn't drink like I did. He could always moderate. But our relationship is so much better, and that was one of the biggest concerns that I had. It's not always the case for people, though.
So once you did start this 100-day challenge and you were no longer drinking, how did you navigate the thought of telling other people that you weren't drinking and what did you do?
So because I was doing that, classed it as a 100-day challenge for myself at the start. I just told everybody that's what I was doing. And I had the other side, the other benefit that I had. My friends know that I'm very determined, and I do have a bit of a resting bitch face. When I've made my mind up about something, it's very obvious I've made my mind up about something. And I was heavily overweight. I'm quite short, and I was a certain weight, and you couldn't really ignore the fact that if I told you I'm trying to do a 100-day alcohol-free challenge to lose some weight, it just stopped people, it just shut them up. And I think because I was able to say it with conviction, because I really bloody meant it, and they couldn't argue with that because it's personal. It really helped me in those early days. It really did. But strangely enough, in that initial 100 days, I'd managed to brainwash myself with the right things at the right time. That at 30 days, I to go from a grey area drinker that was the type of person who people would ring and ask what kind of wine they should take to their friend's house because I used to pride myself on being that person,
Of
an
course.
absolute wine snob, to go from that to 30 days, and I knew that I was never going to touch another drop again. I'd listened to the right thing, like I say, at the right time. I wasn't happy about it. I was fuming because I something had switched in my head, and I knew that if I was to go back to it, I would be crackers because I knew too much. That's how I felt at the time.
So did your friends sort of count down that 100 days and then wonder what
Yeah, they
happened
did.
or
Yeah, we got we were all turning 40 the following year. And we got the first of the 40th celebrations was happening on the 101st day. So for them, it was, well, she's done 100 days. Of course, we're going to go and get wasted. We were in a gorgeous country cottage in the middle of Lincolnshire in the UK, and it would have been absolute carnage, especially because the girl whose 40th it was my kind of drinking buddy, apart from my husband Dale. She was the type of girl that our husbands would wince if they knew we were going out together. I've known her since I was really, really young, really, really young. I can remember telling her, I'm not going to drink. I think I'm done. She was like, well, what the hell are we going to do together then? I was like, I don't know, but we'll work it out. We'll work it out. But yeah, they did count down. Yeah, because I know I'm different. I know I'm a very different person, but it's always been really important to me to show them that I'm different, but not in a bad way. I'm different, not in a negative way. Still
Hey,
me.
wait,
You
so
just get more
you left me
presence.
hanging. You left me
Yeah.
hanging. So you go, so it's time, it's the 101st day. What did they do and what did you do? Like that to me is the most fascinating part of all of our stories is how do we navigate those moments when the expectation is that we're going to show up one way and that the reality is
Well,
we
I told
don't.
them before. I told them before, and this is what I always, always, always preach to the women that I work with. If you've got something coming up like this, you've got to try and find a way of making it as easy as possible for yourself. And the easiest thing for me to do was to tell them all in advance. Sometimes you're making a big deal out of something and they're like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't really matter. In my friendship group, I knew it was going to matter, so I just told them all before I went, and they were absolutely fine with it. Completely fine. They understood. Not one of them said, "Oh well, I thought you should," or "It was about time," or "We've been waiting for it." That just wasn't how I was perceived in terms of my drinking relationship. It was just a lot of it was internal, and the implications it was having for me mentally and physically. Externally, they weren't expecting me to stop drinking because I didn't drink any differently to anybody else in their eyes. So they were fine with it.
And you had said just a minute ago that you and your friends said like, what are we going to do if we don't drink together? What did you do if you weren't drinking together?
Well, that entire weekend, I made sure I got alcohol-free options. In the morning, I was that typical, stereotypical cliche, getting everybody up and we're all going for a walk. apart from the ones that were really hungover. So we were up going for a walk and we just find other things to do. It is, I think it's uncomfortable for people when you're the only person, like there's one person that usually you all go and you all drink together, and then one person changes the entire dynamic. I think it can be uncomfortable, and maybe it was. The only thing that annoyed me of that weekend is that I just couldn't get to sleep because they were all so bloody loud. But 100 days prior to that, it would have been me, if not worse. So yeah, I had alcohol-free drinks. We still danced, we still partied, we still played games because you're not frigging boring just because you're not drinking. Yeah, you could probably get tired earlier because you're not drinking through it. But yeah, it was fun. I was able to be more present, connect with them, ask them genuine questions rather than just getting there and all being wasted. It was a great weekend. I'll always remember it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now I'm curious to kind of move you forward. At what point did you start thinking to yourself, this might need to be more than just a shift in my personal life?
What do you mean?
Well, I know that the rest of the story is that you left your corporate career and went full bore into working with sober people.
Mm.
Where did that thinking begin to happen? And what precipitated
So
that
I
shift?
so I started sharing my sober story on Instagram immediately. Day one, there was a post that I'm setting myself 100 days to not drink. I'd always been the type of person, if I was doing a slimming world or a weight loss challenge or something like that, I'd have to have an Instagram page to keep myself accountable, and it always helped me, always worked. So I used it as a bit of a people use journals, don't they? They'll use
Mhm.
videos or whatever they use. I used Instagram as my personal sobriety journal. So every single day for the last 3.5 years, par probably 2 days or something like that, I have been on my Instagram and done a post every single day for that entire time,
Wow,
every day.
that's
And
impressive.
in those early stages, I was just sharing every thought that came into my head, every new revelation, because, like I say, Margie, I'm not joking. It was so deeply ingrained in everything that I did, which is why I had enough to talk about every day, be it around going to meet a friend for a drink. And oh my God, I managed to come home and not pick a bottle up on the way home. Because usually for me, going to meet a friend for a drink was either leaving the car, getting a taxi, or having a bottle when I got home. So everything I did, there was a link to I've not thought about alcohol. I haven't drank. I've woken up this morning after doing this event and I feel clear. So I shared something every single day. And as that time went on, women started to reach out and sort of say, oh my God, I haven't heard people talk about this before. Because even just 3.5 years ago, people weren't being vocal about
Right.
the real side of sobriety. We see a lot of the kind of rainbows and kittens and how things are, but I've never been afraid to share the thoughts I'm having at 2 o'clock in the morning, the things that I did, because I know that you're doing them too. And if I can shine a light on them, you're going to feel like you're not on your own. So I've always
Love
done
that.
that right from the start, that I've got to be willing. I've got to be willing to share my story for others to feel comfortable to share theirs too. And yes, it's been vulnerable, and yes, it's been quite scary, but in turn, it's helped to help a lot of other women change their relationship with alcohol. So I'll never not do it, as uncomfortable as it feels at times. So I shared the whole journey. People started to reach out and go, "Oh my God, me too." And I found that my inbox was just rife. I'm still working full time at this point. And then I had this idea, like, I've done 100 days. I know what I did to get through to 100 days. I know what I did in that first 30 days to make me change. I know what I listened to. I know what I watched. I know what I did. And all of it for me was around identity, which we can delve more into if you want to. Um, but I decided that because I was creating these conversations, and it was so regular, it was very, very common. I wanted to come at it from a point of not from coaching, from a moral perspective, that I wanted to feel that I was qualified to have these conversations with these women, because some of the scenarios, and you'll know, and you'll have heard it, met it, experienced it, I'm sure. Some of these scenarios for some of these ladies that I spoke to, are the situations that they were in with their kids and they're on their own, etc., was heartbreaking. But I wasn't qualified to be having these conversations. It was all purely from life experience. So I wanted to seek out a qualification. And fast forward a few months, etc., I trained with Andy Ramage, and I
We
qualified
love
with
Andy
him.
Ramage.
We all love Andy. We all love Andy. And I had this idea to wrap up everything that I knew had got me to 100 days alcohol free, and put it into a service for the women to try and help them get to 100 days like I did, but to make it sustainable. Not just the generic white knuckling motivation, get to the end of the 100 days, a full transformation, a holistic approach, basic needs nurturing, community, all the things that we know truly matter. But focusing on the identity of the person. So they're not just doing a challenge as a woman that's not drinking. They're doing a challenge of the version of the woman who doesn't drink again. And what does that look like? What does her life look like? How does she show up? How does she dress? What does she do for work? And really trying to embody the identity of the version they want to be, not just the version they are now without the alcohol.
Yes.
So that was the birth of the 100 Days to Flourish program. That is my signature program that I do now, alongside
Beautiful.
my one-on-one coaching.
Beautiful. Did you know during your 100 days that you were becoming a different person?
I had to do it from the start. I had to do it from the start. I drew her. I drew her. I had a Pinterest board. I knew what if I was going to when I got to that 30-day period and I knew that this was going to be a long-term thing. The 100 days initially felt ridiculous to me, but when I got to 30 days and thought you're done, I knew it was going to take more than just trying to get to the end of 100 days and kind of see how I feel at the end because we know how that plays out. If we leave anything to chance with sobriety, we know how that plays out. So I did. I literally drew myself and I wrote down how she dressed. I had a Pinterest board of the outfits that she wore to work. Because at the end of the day, as well, Margie, I had a lot of weight I wanted to lose as well. So a visualization of that version of me had lost the weight. She was doing this. She was exercising. She spoke to her children a certain way. So I really did get really deep and a bit weird about my identity. But it works. It absolutely works, and you can't argue with it.
Do you know, I'm fascinated by this because when I got sober, the only thing that was available was AA. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that AA was there for me.
Yeah.
And the people in the rooms and the program that I walked through saved my life for
Yeah.
sure. Um, and knowing what's available today, it it probably wasn't the best match for me. And as I'm sitting here listening to you for the first time ever, it's suddenly dawning on me like that contradiction between one day at a time and visualize the person that you want to become. It's fascinating. And
Hmm.
one day at a time was great for me at the time. I couldn't do one day at a time, by the way. I could do 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
If you had told me I was quitting forever, that would have been a barrier
Mm,
for sure. So there is some value to that and validity to that. But I started, my first drink was at 8,
mm,
and I started drinking more regularly, sort of middle school, high school, and
yeah.
never stopped. So I was not even a developed person. I didn't have somebody to like, once I quit drinking, then I could go back to being me. I didn't have me at all.
Mm,
And so in some ways, listening to you, it feels both exciting and also daunting early in sobriety to imagine who I could become because I didn't have even the vaguest idea. So how do
yeah.
you help people who are starting from a place of complete unknown about what they like, what they don't like, how they feel, how they don't feel? Like I didn't know any of those things.
Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily how they feel at the time, because like you say, if you can't place it at the moment, it's not about how you feel now, it's how do you want to feel. Everybody
Mhm.
knows a version of themselves they want to become. It might be a celebrity. It might be a future version of you. It might be somebody you've seen in a film. It doesn't matter. So long as you have a visualization in your mind or a version in your mind of how you want to feel, that's all that it takes. Because if you don't have a vision of yourself, if you don't have a vision of the person you want to become, all your brain knows is to pull you back to the version that it's familiar with. And like you've just said there, you didn't know, you didn't feel, you didn't know what you were wanted to be or what you were at the time, or you didn't even have anything in the past. So it was the only thing you really could do is stay where you were without that
Mm.
intervention.
Yep. Yeah. I've said this before on the podcast, so excuse me for those of you who have listened to many episodes, but when I think about changing anything about our lives,
Yeah.
I love gardening. And
Hmm.
so my analogy is if you have a plot of land and you spend a whole lot of time picking weeds and then you walk away, great job, and a week later come back, what's happened? New
They'll come
weeds
back. Yeah.
start popping up.
Yeah.
But if after you finish weeding, then you put some plants in there that begin to grow and fill out that space, sure, you might get a stray weed here and there, but by and large, those new plants take over that plot of land and suppress those weeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
So when did you decide that this was going to be your full time? And what was it like to make the decision to leave your corporate life and change that part of your identity?
There was an undeniable and overwhelming wave that I had found my purpose. And I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore it. As I said to you, I think it was you for this too today, that the role I had was trying to kind of push a purpose on us, the corporate purpose. And it was very much not aligned with my individual purpose. In corporate, it was all about generating money for the business. In my personal life, I was helping women change their lives through removing
Mhm.
alcohol. Those two things are not comparable for me. So I knew I'd found my true purpose over here. I knew how that felt. I knew how exciting that was, how fulfilling that was. So once I realized that women wanted me to help them, I knew it was only a matter of time before I could leave my corporate role and start to work with these women full time. It was gradual. I started to work over on Sober Flourish, and the kind of bigger that got, and the more the community grew, I dropped my days steadily within Flora. It wasn't a case of one and then the other and a huge risk take, etc. Because like I climbed the corporate ladder. For 20 odd years I've been in senior digital marketing. So it wasn't an easy decision at all. Um, and there was a whole identity piece there, a whole switch of
Mhm.
identity there. We could do a whole podcast just on that alone, I'm sure. It wasn't an easy choice, even though I knew that I'd found my purpose over here. Heartbreaking at times, heartbreaking at times. But yeah, it was the best decision I've made.
So I know that there's often one set of points of friction when our friend group sees us making changes to stop drinking or what that lifestyle looks like. But there's often a whole nother set of friction with people in our professional world who have some opinions about all of that. Did you run into that?
Um, I have not been asked that before, Margie. Well done. No. Yeah, yes, I think certain dynamics in the workplace definitely changed because I was clear-headed. I was clear-headed. I was driven. I didn't take any nonsense anymore because I could see things for what they finally were. And don't get me wrong, like I say, I didn't drink every day, but I didn't not drink every day either. And I'm talking at least 4 nights a week. Don't get me wrong, I was nowhere near a saint and I wasn't just your weekend drinker. So I was never fully detoxing, I was never fully clear, never fully present, always anxious going into a meeting, etc. So I was never fully me. So for me to then all of a sudden start to show up with this clear mind, getting things done exceptionally fast. I don't think it was easy for people to kind of ignore at work. And I could see things that weren't right. And I was in a position where I wouldn't just ignore the things that weren't right, kind of calling them out a little bit more, pushing for promotion. I'd been at a pay grade, I'd been working at a certain grade for far too long. And all of a sudden, the fog lifted. And I was like, hang on a minute, I'm doing all of these roles from the grade above me, but I'm getting paid for the grade below me. So you can imagine how that went down. Because there were no lies told. This is why I should be getting paid because so you could there was a lot, there was a hell of a lot, and certain dynamics certainly change in the workplace. But my director was incredible. He always took the time to tell me how proud he was.
Mm.
Um, and purely he would always back that up with because I could never do it myself. I'm so proud that you've done, and don't get me wrong, they never saw me Larry or drunk at Christmas parties or anything like
Right.
that. But he was a big drinker too, and he knows. Like he's tried to take breaks before and found it really difficult. One interesting thing that I know that you'll find interesting was a comment that I heard. So my head of department told me at one of our colleagues' weddings that our president, so the CEO at the time, said that he found my sobriety journey fascinating and my Instagram fascinating. He said it's like a morbid fascination. It's like watching a car crash happen at the side of the road that you can't quite look away from.
Wow.
It still makes me giggle now when I hear I'll say it out loud because obviously you just like water off a duck's back when you're in early sobriety because you hear bloody all sorts, don't you? Like, no, it's fine, everything's fine, stay tunnel visioned. But when I reflect back on that now, that's just the complete, it's not a surprise really, is it? It's sad that it's not a
Sure, you're
surprise.
threatening the norm.
Mhm.
And then as you began to move into this shift and reduce your days and hours and then walk away, they had to have all thought that you were bloody nuts.
Probably, probably.
But they didn't tell you?
Well, I didn't kind of go and go, oh my God, the business is doing really well. I'm going to leave. I played my cards really close to my chest. And when I dropped my days down, I remember my head of department saying, well, how do we know that you're not going to drop your days down even further? I said, well, you don't. You don't know that I'm not going to try and drop my days down even further because the aim is that, of course, I'm going to want to drop my days down even further because this is my passion. I want to help other women change
Yeah.
their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a strange time, Margie. It really was a strange time. It wasn't handled the best, not from my part, but we live and we learn.
So looking back from the day that you had this realization at the all-inclusive resort until today,
Yeah.
as it relates to sort of living this life out loud, what has been the hardest part for you?
The hardest part for me, stepping over the fear of judgment of people that I know in a bid to normalize grey area drinking.
Say more about that.
So, where I mentioned before about the vulnerability,
Mm.
my Instagram is not generic sobriety advice. It just isn't. It's deep, potentially shameful if fueled, if you see what I mean? It can be seen as some people may look at that and think, well, I'd be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
Um, really personal stories that my friends wouldn't have known about. And my family follow my Instagram. I see people now that will pop up that are like my auntie's sister, my auntie's cousin, or my sister-in-law followed my Instagram account the other day, and and I think it's the hardest bit is about not caring what everybody else thinks because it's just part of my story.
Yeah.
And getting over the fear of judgment of other people. I did that
And
a long
how have you
time ago.
how have you done that?
Exposure therapy. There's no other way
Okay.
of doing it, is there? It's the same with confidence. You just gotta go keep doing it, and then one day it gets easier. But I think with anything with Instagram, you expose yourself to. not only people you know, it's other people too. It's you get a few trolls or crappy
Yeah.
comments on your Instagram, and you just have to realize that why am I doing this? What's the reason I'm doing it? I was on a podcast really early in my sobriety, and I still to this day know that it feels like a big overshare, some of the things that I shared, but I tell you, the amount of women that have reached out from that one podcast and told me that it changed their lives and that they felt makes me emotional. um, that it really helped them. It just makes it worthwhile. It just makes it worthwhile. So the hardest thing probably is to get past the fear of judgment, as my Instagram account's grown as well, really. Um,
And what's been the most surprisingly best part during that same time span?
mm, how much of a good mum I am.
Mm,
Because I would never have looked back and said that I was a bad mum, ever. But now I have something to compare it to that I certainly was not as present as I should have been. And now knowing that I get to, I mean, so I drank right up to Dexter, my eldest, being 11. But with Ollie, he's never known me really as a drinker. He's only 1.5, I think, when I stopped, too. And I'm really present. And I'm a bloody good mum.
I love that. I can so relate to that. I
There's
was
so
I
much
was
though that there's not one thing that hasn't got better. Not one thing.
I was 6 months sober, and I
Mm,
was driving with my son in the car who was, oh, maybe 10 at the time.
mm.
And boys, I find, had the best conversations when they were in the back car with me. They won't
Yeah.
talk to you face to face, but in the back of the car. So he says to me, he says, Mommy, did you get sober for me and my sister? And in that moment, I knew this was a really important question that I had to think about.
Mm,
And I said, of course, I want to be the best mom that I can for you, but I feel like I was always there for you guys. And truly, this was about like me wanting to have the best me that I could.
mm.
And that's really why I quit drinking. And he thought about that for a minute and he said, well, yeah, you were always there, but you weren't really there. And now you are. Out of like a 10-year-old.
It's
And that
crazy
makes
what
me want to cry.
it's crazy what they notice.
Mm,
It really is. I asked Dexter the opposite. I asked him, "Did you ever notice that I changed?" And he said, "Yeah, of course. Of course, I noticed that you changed when you had a drink."
mm.
And again, I wasn't kind of ever a falling all over the place kind of person.
No, me neither. Yeah.
Never very visual or anything like that. But you only now have to spend time with other people when they drink to know. It's a really big difference. People drink a really big difference. And I think when it's out of their mouths, it does make a big difference. It does.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Um, Jodi, for somebody who's thinking about wanting to live more freely in their sober choices, who maybe has not the bravery that you do to be fully transparent on Instagram every single day, but they do want to feel as though they can be open about it with their work colleagues or their friends in a way that maybe they haven't. What would you say to them?
I I think regardless of whatever your reason is for wanting to stop, I was going to say then that I would always kind of pull it back to your health. Bring it back to your health. I'm making a healthier lifestyle choice because nobody can argue with that. But I think the key in what you just said there is actually telling people. We talked briefly before we hit record about we talk about there being so much stigma in sobriety and there being so much shame. But I do feel that we add to the stigma and we add to the shame if we don't talk about it ourselves. If we act as if it's something that's a dirty little secret that we should be quiet and keep to ourselves, we make that worse. And it's not easy to be loud and it's not easy to be proud, but you've got nothing to be ashamed of. You're making a better choice for yourself and everybody else around you. And if anybody ever has anything to say about that, it's because they are feeling defensive because you are holding a mirror up to their drinking. It is nothing about you. One of the
Mhm.
biggest things that has made my sobriety successful and sustainable. It's the same thing. I use the word successful because I mean sustainable, is being open and honest with my husband. Every thought that came through my head, being open and honest with my family, being open and honest with my friends. If I kept this to myself, I would have gone back over and over and over again because I had no accountability. But I would always, always, always recommend telling at least somebody. And you can bring that back to your health, whatever that might be, but just don't not say anything.
I love that reframing. And that's the world we live in today. And isn't that beautiful that people now understand that choosing not to drink is a healthier decision?
Hmm.
Ah, what a blessing.
Yeah,
What a
we can't
blessing.
argue with that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely
I
love
bloody
that.
love my brain and I bloody love my body. And I want to be around as long as I possibly can for my kids. What are they going to say then?
Yeah. How do people reach you if they want to learn more about you and connect with you?
The easiest way is probably on Instagram, which is at soberflourish, or on email, which is hello@soberflourish.com.
Beautiful. And we will put that in the show notes as well. You know, I feel so filled up by this conversation. And when I think about what we've talked about, it, it would be so easy to look at you now and see someone who's made this bold move, built something meaningful, stepped into this whole new chapter, and think, well, I could never do that. But what we heard from you today is that it didn't start that way. It
Mhm.
just started with this quiet realization, this moment of honesty, and a decision that probably didn't feel bold at the time. It probably just felt necessary. And I think that that's where so many people are, not ready to change everything overnight, but starting to question what's working and what isn't working. And what Jodi's story shows us is that all of these small moments of self reflection, of honesty, that they can lead somewhere bigger than what you expect. Not because you force it, but because you just start living in a way that's more aligned with who you actually are. Or, as you said, who you envision yourself to wanting to become. And from there, things just start to begin to shift. So, if something in this conversation resonated with you, and I certainly know it did with me, you don't have to have a big plan. You don't have to know where it's going. You just have to be willing to notice. Notice where you might be ready for something different. Jodi, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank
Thank you for
all of
having me.
you, absolutely. And thank all of you for listening to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. And if this episode made you think of someone else who might need to hear it, please share it with them and subscribe because these conversations have a way of reaching people when they need it the most. We'll see you next week.